It claims here, that in order to maintain a fair and democratic justice system, selection of the juries in the UK from the electoral roll is random and there is no criteria necessary for selection. I don't believe that. The jurors can be challenged by the police. I actually think that they're challenging them themselves. I think they're vetting them. It also claims that it says the seats of modern justice system were sown by Henry I, 1154 to 1189, who established a jury of 12 local knights to settle disputes over the ownership of land. When Henry came to the throne, there were just 18 judges in the country compared to more than 40,000 today. That's a lot. I didn't think there were that many. I thought they were wanting to cut down on justices. The Justices of the Peace Act wasn't until later on, 1361. 1361, so that's 1361. They actually started selecting people who weren't knights. According to the latest figures from the Ministry of Justice, there is about 35% chance of people in England and Wales being summoned for a jury service over the course of their lifetime. Well, I haven't been in the 35%, so I must have been lucky. I don't think that this is all the truth. I think that they're using. I think they're using that clause that they can be challenged depending on the case. I think they do more than just challenging them. I think that they're vetting them. It's got a little bit of history about the Jurats here for Guernsey, although I think it's sort of a bit more French. But it's saying that they're elected by states of election, which consists of members of state of deliberation and the bailiffs, Jurats, representatives of parish, douzions, and the rectors of the Anglican and parish churches. Candidates must be nominated by a member of the states of election. This doesn't seem to be the same election process as what was in England, but it says that there is no jury system. There is no jury system in Guernsey. That means for choosing people at random. The Jurats act as a jury and are judges of fact in both civil and criminal cases. Well, that's what they were doing over here. Decisions are reached by a simple majority. Jurats are not interpreters of law. That function is undertaken by the presiding judge, and jurats must follow their directions. That's different to over here. In criminal cases, the senior jurat who must follow their directions. Act as chairman of the Jurats' deliberations, report the decisions to court. That doesn't necessarily mean that. Maybe that could mean they must take their advice. In criminal cases, following a determination of guilt or not guilty plea, and after hearing any pleas of mitigation, the judge retires with the jurats and directs them on issues relevant to sentencing. The jurats fix the sentence, and the judge returns to the court with the jurats to deliver the sentence and give reasons for their decision. So the jurats actually decide the sentence. In civil cases, the judge retires with the jurats to direct them on the law. That it says direct, it doesn't mean after the jurats have reached a decision, the judge drafts a reasoned judgment and then returns to the court with the jurats to declare the decision and state the appropriate reasons. That means that the judge, if the judge is directing on the law, that means that he's updating them fully on the law. So that means that they're not only entitled to know the law, that means they can ask the judge what the law is, right? If in civil cases the judge retires with the jurats and directs them in the law, that means that he's conversing them in law. That means that the jury can question the judge on the law and talk about it with them. That means that they've got full access to the law, in other words, and the right to know the law in the matter. But clearly, I think they can make their own decisions as well. So I don't get how the CPS making out that you're not allowed to research the law if you're serving on the jury. Particularly when you don't even need to use the law anyway to make a decision. And they say that it's not an offence to look at open public documents. Open public documents being like half of legislation.gov is published now, and it's been presented to the people through charters to every citizen as a presentment, so everyone knows what the fucking law is. Even if you don't have the right to interpret it, we've been presented with it and told what it is. I'm pretty sure that we're meant to know what it is when they give it in presentment and the town crier tells you what the law is. You're meant to know. If that ain't fucking interpreting it, I don't know what is in English. There's some... We've got some imbeciles in this government, haven't we? We've got some real bright sparks in this government. The jurats have numerous other duties conferred upon them by statute. They comprise the bench of the royal court, sitting both as a full court and as a ordinary court, including hearing appeals from the magistrates' court. Appealing from the magistrates' court. They conduct the contracts court, which deals with conveyances, bonds, liquor, blah blah blah, commissions, liquidation hearings. They supervise the destruction of Guernsey currency notes, the burning of money, and have a number of other functions. So they're actually the King's Bench. They comprise the bench of the royal court. I wonder if the King's Bench does mean all the courts then, and also not being judged by a jury. If it's the right of the subjects to petition the King, and no prosecutions for doing so are illegal, then I think that illegal prosecutions by the King's Bench. Because when you're petitioning the King, you're not taking it to the bench, you're taking it to Parliament. Because I don't think the people voted for MPs. Only certain land owners voted for MPs at one point. According to this, it would suggest that the King's Bench, there is the court of the King's Bench. I think that it does extend. I think the King's Bench actually means, like, you know, the judicial system, the courts. Four jurats usually are appointed lieutenant bailiffs and have some additional duties, primarily presiding over contracts courts. As members of the royal court, jurats are present at certain ceremonial occasions, including Liberation Day and Remembrance Day. At such occasions, and while sitting on the bench, they wear purple robes, toques, hats, toques. Sounds like talks, doesn't it? Sounds like a talk. Wing collars and bands. History. In the Middle Ages, the King's Jurats, formed a bench of judgment finders who declared and interpreted customary law. They pronounced both judgment and sentence. Historically, there were 12 jurats elected for life. The first recorded mention of Jurats in the royal court was 1179. The names of the Jurats since 1299 are recorded on a roll of honour board at the Jurats chambers in the royal courthouse. The precept of the size of 41 described the Jurats as 12 most notable, impartial, wise, loyal, and rich men of the island. Warburn's treatise on the history, laws, and customs of the island of Guernsey states that in previous centuries, when the vacancies occurred, the Jurats bench and the inhabitants of the parishes had replacements. Jurats, and they did so after the church service. In previous centuries, when vacancies occurred on the Jurats bench, the inhabitants of the parishes had to elect replacement Jurats. They did so after the church service. So this is very, very similar to what I've been reading about in England. The Jurats' oath involves undertakings to maintain the republic and uphold its laws, liberties, customs, and other legal usages, to serve as required in court, rendering justice to all, great or small, particularly widows and orphans, not to accept bribes. Not to accept bribes. Bribes, what, like, fines when you haven't even had a jurat, you haven't even had a fair trial. Accept fines from police chiefs, deposing on yourself for a bribe. Bribes, confess. I'll only fine you 60 quid, but if you don't do it within 2 weeks, then it's 80, and then you can have a fair trial. You cunt. Bribes. And by the way, we've got a new law now. It says that you're not allowed to. You don't have the right to remain silent. You don't have the right to remain silent. Oh, that's funny. I thought that was, why are you reading my rights then? I'm not reading my rights. You're sending me a letter. It's a bribe. I'm sure I've seen Charles knocking around in one of those purple robes. Or was it a black one? Alright, we've got an account. The first elections of mayors and jurats. We've actually got an account of it now. Sandwich. It always seems the accounts are from like Dover or Sandwich or somewhere down that area. Source of the account is the custom completed in 1301 by Adam Champais, the town clerk of Sandwich. 1290s. On the Monday next after the feast of the Apostle St. Andrew, the common horn is sounded at about 1 o'clock by the sergeant at the 14 usual places. He makes a proclamation to this effect: every man of 12 years or more go to St. Clement's Church there. Our commonalty hath need. Haste, haste. Well, the commonalty is the word of the public, the people. That's what those charters were addressed to, the commonalty. The laws given to the people. You see, it's a good job he's not reading out. It's a good job. What happens if the jury go out of Leicester Magistrates Court? They're not allowed to research the law. Then the fucking town crier pops up with a new fucking set of legislation. Hear ye, hear ye. This is an open public document. Happens to be the new laws of Leicester. By the way, I'm going to read you to it now. It's compulsory for you to know these laws. Oh, sorry, we're on jury duty. I'm not allowed to read the law. I've been told it's an offence. Oh, we better put your fucking fingers in your ears then, you cunts. Because unless you're completely and totally retarded, like the Crown Prosecution Service. Hear ye, hear ye. I update ye with the great new charter of the city and the new laws. All will listen, except the juries on jury duty, because it's an offence for them to study or read the law, even though it's an open public document, and they admit that for once. Hereby, letters patent open like legislation.gov UK, because my name is Keir Starmer. I'm in charge of a competent Crown Prosecution Service of England as Director of Public Prosecutions, just like Max Hill, because Max Hill ignores law. Yes, that's not the law that the town crier. It'd be all right if Max Hill researched some law, wouldn't it? Hey, I'm Max Hill. Why don't you research a bit of law then, Max? You're about to send, someone to the High Court. No, can't research law. That'd be like the jurors, not allowed to research the law. The Chief Crown Prosecutor's not allowed to research the law either, is he? In fact, he can't research any law that would make his actions unlawful. No. You can't have a Chief Crown Prosecutor researching law that makes his actions unlawful. That would be a crime. Every man of 12 years or more is to go to the commonalty when the mayor of the previous year and the commonalty are assembled in the church of St. Clement's, and the sergeant has brought his horn. The mayor takes a stick and horn from the sergeant. They actually had a horn. I wonder if the horn's going back a bit further. The horn must be going back even further, maybe. And the key of the chest from the two Jurats, the keepers, and puts them near him. He then addresses the commonalty in a speech, desiring them to proceed to a new election. The commonalty desire the mayor to withdraw and name 3 other reputable men. Commonalty desire the mayor to withdraw and name 3 other reputable men, whether present or not, to be elected with him, who must be natives of the town, for no strangers are eligible to the office of mayor. Then somebody desires the free man to make choice of one of the 4. Must be natives. He actually says natives. I don't think Sanat Priti Patel would be too impressed about that. Judging by natives, does that mean they were born there? Or, has it got other connotations under it? I'm not the person who wrote this. I'm just posing the question. Then, because that poses some questions for the Act of Settlement, and this is way before 1700. Then someone desires the freemen to make choice of one of the 4 in election to be mayor. The votes are then also they choose. The votes then collected, first of the Jurats, then of the free men. And when the election is decided unanimously or by a plurality of votes, 2 persons go to the elected mayor and desire him in the name of the assembly to come take his office and be sworn. The mayor then takes the oath. The Jurats, aldermen, barons, 12 in number, are appointed and sworn. Two of the keys of the common chest are given to 2 of the Jurats. The third of the chest itself remains because of the mayor. After the business is over, the common wardman bears the horn on his shoulders to the mayor's house. The mayor follows with the rest of the assembly. On the Thursday next after the election of the mayor, the town clerk is appointed. I think it's skipping this out a bit. What I actually think, I think they're censoring this a little bit. I think So this bit, I think they're trying to cover this process up a bit. This bit here, he then addresses the commonality in a speech, desiring them to then proceed to a new election, right? I think they proceed and then elect the Jurats. And then, so there's two main Jurats who keep the chest. I think they elect whatever Jurats they need to be replaced, the number of Jurats, right? That's separate. And then here, then the commonality desire the current mayor, because he's only in for a year at this stage until they have him for longer, to withdraw. And then the mayor names three. Oh, so the mayor actually, the mayor's nominating three people, and they've got to be natives of the town and not strangers. And then you pick from the three. So after a mayor is finished, the mayor can nominate three people. When a mayor is finished, a mayor can nominate three, and then people can vote. People can vote from them. The votes are then collected first of the Jurats, then of the freemen. When the election is decided unanimously or by the plurality of votes, two persons go to the elected mayor and desire him and his assembly to come and take the oath. The Jurats, Jurai, Alderman, Barons, 12 in number are appointed and sworn. Two of the keys of the... So 12. So it's this is kind of, I don't know who's written this, but this is sandwich, and I think that the government are trying to censor they're trying to make it. This has been trimmed, so the people of the village do have a free open vote on the Jurats, but for the mayor, it's saying that for the mayor, when a mayor's going out, then he chooses three people, and then everyone votes of their preference out of those three, right? Now, this is interesting. This is now interesting now. It's interesting because this from the National Archives that I talked about before. This is from that area. It's like Kent, like the coast of Kent area. Like that other one that we've just read, that's from around the same sort of part of England, like, sort of like Folkestone, Dover, Sandwich, and going round that part of the coast. It says from 1700 to 1712, certain Jurats were elected justices of the peace for the coming year. But in 1712, this practice was discontinued, with the note that according to the Charter of James I, all the Jurats were automatically justices. So what it's saying is that some people who were already elected, certain Jurats were elected justices of the peace for the coming year. Well, do you know what that'll mean? That'll mean like people who the mayor has picked. The mayor can pick people. Maybe he was just picking people. He can nominate anyone he wants, but he might have been nominating people who were already Jurats, or that might have been his preference that they were already Jurats. But in that other law from really earlier on, it says that they've just got to be native. But the mayor probably likely will have picked, nominated people who were, who would have probably done what he wanted in the court, but then you can choose from them. Maybe, I don't know. Says he could choose anyone, but they were elected. This one says that this claims that the Jurats are equivalent to justices of the peace, so they don't need electing. But I think then you've got the mayor as separate to that as well. You know, it seems to me like they had slightly different variations around because they had different charters for different towns and slightly different rules. And some towns got a specific charter with a specific rule, and some of the mayors could serve for a year, and then they give certain charters to certain places where the mayor could serve for life and so forth. So I think they were like sort of they were giving like slightly different rules to different towns at one point. There's quite a lot of misinformation on some of these websites. They're saying that in 1825 the rules regarding jury selection were codified. At this time, the universal suffrage was still a century away, so it's no surprise that juries were still socialists. You had to own a certain amount of property to qualify. Well, you never actually did, back then. Today, the jury selection is random. Back then, officials could use their discretion or include or exclude individual citizens. A system which is obviously open to corruption. It's not open to corruption when you can vote, when the village is voting on people. This is misinformation. In 1919, women who satisfied the property qualifications were included in juries. These qualifications were finally abolished in 1974. It was only then that juries became true cross-sections of society. No cross-section of modern-day juries that the majority verdicts are allowed. This wasn't the case until 1967. Before then, a jury had to reach a unanimous verdict. A unanimous verdict. (1967), that's when they did the Criminal Law Act with assisting offenders. When they brought in assisting offenders. And that's when they changed some of the wording on the Tumultuous Petitioning Act, claiming they changed the words from the claim that they changed the words from quarter sessions to the court. But then they abolished the quarter sessions shortly after, which that was a lie in the legislation. There's some lies in the legislation. Why did they make it to percentage at the same time when they brought in assisting offenders? All it says is today's jury selection is random. Back then, local officials could use their discretion to include. No one's telling us when they actually brought in the random selection on the poll. It might be something to do with the Representation of the People Act. In 1825, the rules regarding jury selection were codified. Well, the thing is, they removed them from the magistrates' court when they codified them. And then you've got a grand jury as well, which is quite a lot of people. But they were in the civil courts till quite far on. But in the 18th century, some middle-class citizens dodged jury service. In response, Parliament passed an Act for Better Regulation of Juries, 1730. This stipulated that lists of people liable for jury service had to be publicly displayed in parishes. The jury are selected by the judge to reach a unanimous verdict. The jury are asked by the judge to reach a unanimous verdict. That means they should all agree on whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. If they can't do that, after carefully considering and discussing the evidence, then the judge can allow them to reach a majority verdict of at least 10 people. Well, that's a scam, isn't it? That means that if the judge isn't too happy with it, then he can just bypass it. So that's not the jury's decision, is it? He's basically messing around with the rules in order to suit him. That puts a shame on the pen. Well, so you might as well rip that plaque off the wall at the Old Bailey. Might as well chuck it in. Might as well chuck it underneath Parliament when Parliament burned down. They might as well have ripped that plaque when Parliament were burning down in 1636 or whenever. They might as well have gone into the Old Bailey and chucked that fucking plaque in there as well from 1670. You know. The positions are burning enough. Parliament might fucking well throw a pen's plaque in there as well. Couldn't. Won't be having won't be having one or two people, spoiling my court sessions. Can you believe this? He's got a little switch, so he can, if he doesn't like the verdicts that they come out with, like they can just press the button and like, oh, sorry, it'll just expand this little vote a little bit. It's like he's got a fail-safe button. It's like on Spectre, isn't it? It's like on Spectre, and he's got a button on the chair, if there's one person on the jury who won't agree, it's like, you just press the button, like on Spectre, $1 million, Mr. Bond. I don't like the way this jury's going. Who's spoiling this jury? Oh, this idiot here. You won't agree. We'll soon see about that. It's like Spectre, isn't it? I'll push the button on the chair. It's like Spectre. It's like Blofeld, isn't it? It's like Blofeld stroking his cat on the fucking jury, You'd have thought that after all the vetting that they can do with the police and testing jurors and all the rest of it, you'd have thought that he'd be satisfied with his jury. And then, I'm finally satisfied with my jury. I've had them vetted about 16 fucking times. I've challenged about 8 of them. And now they're still not giving me the verdict. You're still one cunt fucking not giving me the verdict. So, like, $1 million, Mr. Bond. This pushes the fucking button. It's like Graham Norton fucking pushes the button. You don't worry, I'll get the right verdict out of you all. It's a miracle that fucking Perrins. I'm quite surprised Perrins. Was it unanimous when all the jury in Southwark with Perrins' case? I don't actually know what the votes were at, but it's quite a miracle, really. I'm quite surprised that Perrins didn't have them all interrogated. Just won't tell me it will not tell me when they introduced the selection of juries onto the electoral register for random selection. I'm guessing now, I think off the top of my head, I'm guessing it will be the Representation of the People Act, because the Representation of the People Act has got rules for the use of the electoral register for selecting juries. So it's going to probably be that, and that means that it's the first Representation of the People Act is like around, we're talking like, around the suffragettes sort of time, or just around before then. So that was, I think then up till like the mid-1800s when they pulled them from the magistrates' court. If they pulled them from the magistrates' court, then they won't need them anymore. And then when they got them in civil courts, they got rid of them in 1933 in the civil courts as well. So that's just after the suffragettes. It's through the Representation of the People Act, so it would be like after sort of like the 1800s, I would have thought, coming up to around that suffragettes period. That's probably when they did it. But they still had the assizes for a little while with grand juries. and then obviously not after 1971. So by 1971, when they moved to Crown Court, they were probably already selecting them at random. They didn't have Crown Court though, did they? Crown Court's only for criminal. So I wonder if they were selecting them at random for the civil court for a little while then. But the thing is, the assizes judges went to the county court in the High Court division. They must have been in there for a little while, maybe at random. But the magistrates' courts and those court sessions were taking on quite a lot of the. I think when the assizes, I wonder what did it. I wonder what what they did with the criminal side of the assizes then. Because the civil side of the assizes went to the county court. And I think that the quarter sessions took on more work and the magistrates' courts, so there were less going to the criminal assizes, but they were only a few times a year anyway. Or did the assizes actually have a proper building?